September 11th, 2001. A day that America will never forget. Two hijacked planes crash into the World Trade Centers. One hijacked plane headed for the Pentagon. At first, America didn't know what to do. One plane hit the Pentagon. It was targeted because it showed that we had weakness in defense. Then both towers fell after they were hit. This was targeted because it showed our economic weakness. Another plane was going towards the White House or the Capitol building, but crashed in Pennsylvania and killed a whole plane of people. Thousands of people died, and many more were burned and injured in the 9/11 attacks. Not only did this hurt America physically, but mentally too. Many people suffered, and many people lost friends and family. From 2001 to 2003, we had a major economic recession. Today, our economy has not fully recovered. We also spent billions of dollars on security and defense. September 11th, 2001. This day marked the checkpoint and a major fight on the war on terror. This is the story behind 9/11. This is 9/11, the true story.
It all started in 1979. The Cold War was going on, and the USSR, which was atheist, invaded Afghanistan. This began the Soviet-Afghan War in 1979 to 1988. The Mujahideen, a group of Arabs dedicated to their god, wanted to resist the invasion. They would fight off the USSR in the name of Islam. The U.S. sent billions of dollars as well as weapons to aid the Mujahideen. However, the Mujahideen believed that their god was going to help them. Guerrilla warfare decimated the USSR. Not only did the USSR lose thousands of troops, but it made them look bad. In 1988, the USSR pulled out of Afghanistan. The Mujahideen had won the war. They thought their god helped them win the war, not even the U.S., even though the United States did help them a lot. The Mujahideen now thought they could take down any superpower. In 1989, the Cold War ended and the USSR disbanded. The Mujahideen believed that they caused all of this with the help of their god. The Mujahideen then split up into two groups, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Al-Qaeda believed that their job was to recruit people to help in the jihad, or holy war. Their leader was Osama bin Laden. The other group, the Taliban, was the government of Afghanistan, and they created a purely Islamic state. In 1989, the Cold War ends with the U.S. winning. As a result, the United States became the world's only superpower. From 1989 to 2001, the U.S. had a huge economic boom and controlled the world's economy. Their military was unmatched, and this time period was called the Golden Age of America, and all of this made the U.S. a major target. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and started the Persian Gulf War. Western countries feared that he would conquer more, and then they would have another Hitler on their hands. Hussein also threatened Saudi Arabia. If Hussein conquered Saudi Arabia, he would control 25% of the world's oil production, which he could use to attack the American economy. In 1991, the U.S., under President George H.W. Bush, declared war on Iraq and formed an alliance with the Western countries. The U.S.'s first priority was to protect Saudi Arabia, Operation Desert Shield, and the U.S. stationed hundreds of thousands of troops in Saudi Arabia. The Mujahideen hated the fact that Saudi Arabia rejected their help. They also hated that the two holiest cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina, were now surrounded by U.S. troops. Osama bin Laden feared the U.S.'s military power in Saudi Arabia. Here are some reasons why bin Laden hates the U.S. Bin Laden is mad at the U.S. because we stationed our troops in the two holy cities. He wants Muslims to get mad at America. Bin Laden believes terrorizing people without a reason is unjust. He believes that America must change their government to accept Muslims. Bin Laden also believes he is fighting the injustice America has against them and thinks that America is attacking Islam. He thinks America is contradicting our belief to respect all and everyone is equal. He thinks that the war between the Muslims and the Jews is inevitable. Bin Laden also feels that there are no innocent citizens in America because we can vote to change the government. He also thinks other Western countries are to blame. Muslims and Islamic culture are negatively portrayed, bin Laden says, and believes that Muslims have a right to defend their nation. America sent aid to all the Mujahideen and we're only trying to help. Bin Laden feels that we are all terrorists and have no culture. All Americans are targets in bin Laden's eyes. He thinks that he is defending his god by driving America out of the Muslim countries. The Mujahideen was fighting for God, and the US will be difficult to defeat, but not invincible. Bin Laden thinks that since they defeated the Soviet Union that they will beat America. The Mujahideen believed that America was weak because they pulled out of Somalia and that the US was a paper tiger. American morale was low, and Bin Laden found the US weak. He calls the United States terrorists for having campaigns against them, but the US calls them terrorists. Bin Laden believes America has a corrupt government. He also believes that the Jewish people are exploiting and taking control of the US government. He says we kill innocent people, and the war is going to come to America. He says that the US government will fall. Another issue why Bin Laden wants to kill us is because of the Arab-Israeli conflict. This is the second most important reason why Osama bin Laden hates America. In 1914 to 1918, Great Britain was fighting the Ottoman Empire, in which Palestine was in. Great Britain tried to convince the Arab people living in the Ottoman Empire to revolt. They promised the Arabs a home in Palestine if they helped them out. Great Britain needed Jewish Zionists to help for the war. Great Britain promised the Zionists a homeland in Palestine as well. From 1918 to 1945, Jewish people settled in Palestine, but there was no state of Israel yet. In 1939 to 1945, which was the time period of World War II, the Holocaust was happening, in which 12 million people and 6 million Jews were killed. After the Holocaust, the survivors wanted to go back home, but the Europeans wouldn't let them. The Jewish people had nowhere to go. Many went to the US, and others wanted to have a state in Palestine. The UN, Great Britain, and the United States agreed to create the State of Israel in 1948. The Arabs weren't consulted, and hundreds of thousands of Jews went to Palestine. The Jewish people tried to establish a state, but the Arab countries waged war on Israel. Israel won, and they were able to establish themselves as a state. The Arabs began to see the Jewish state as an extension of Europe, and eventually, the US. The Israelis bought land from Arab landowners, and the peasants had nowhere to go. In 1967, the Six-Day War occurred, and Israel defeated the Arab nation. They took over more territory. Arab extremists believed the only way to beat Israel is through terrorism. 1973 to present-day Israel has been seen as the extension of Europe and the chief enemy of Islam. Palestinians in Israel aren't treated fairly. Bin Laden and other extremists believe that Israel and the US are persecuting the Muslim Palestinians, so they resorted to terrorism to get their needs met. The US tried to create peace in the Middle East by helping the Palestinians create their own state. As you can see, the US was just trying to help. The United States was looked upon as a move of terrorism instead of help in the eyes of Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden. So in return for America's help, the US was bombed and many Americans were killed. The US helped Al-Qaeda, but they did not accept or appreciate our help. The war on terror may never end. It is only the beginning.